Hi, my name is Megan, and this is Everything Lit. And today, I'm bringing you my June-July wrap-up. I had a bit of a family emergency end of June, and so I took July off. But now I'm here, and I'm here with the boy, the legend, Vino. He's like, what are you doing? Strap in, because we got a hefty list. A lot of 4 and 5 stars. I read some good books. Don't pay attention to this stack. I have a book haul coming up, okay? Don't worry about it. Starting beginning of June, I read Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. This is a fantasy. I gave this 5 stars. This follows Wallace, who has died suddenly, and he is taken to this magical tea shop where people pass on. They pass through the door in the ceiling on the 3rd floor, and it's just enchanting and lovely and sweet. If I have any critiques or complaints about this book, it is that the romance is very subtle. It's very subtle and it's very slow, and I could have done with more overt romancing, you know? Then I read In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. I gave this 4 stars, and this follows a group of friends as they go to their 10-year college reunion. One of their friends died in their, I think, senior year, maybe their junior year, and now her younger brother is getting them all together to try and figure out who really did it. There were parts of it that were slower for me. I wasn't super invested in the mystery, but it was interesting, and I liked the main character, even though she was kind of unlikable. And at the end, Ashley Winstead really said white male privilege is everyone's problem. I loved it. Then I read Do I Know You by Emily Wibberley and Austin Siegeman Broca. I finally did it. I finally read it, and I gave it 4 stars. I liked that the couple we were following was actually a married couple, so it was their romance, but like rekindling their romance, which is the only kind of second chance romance I really like. So our married couple, Eliza and Graham, are given a vacation package by Graham's parents for their 5-year wedding anniversary. And so they go to this beautiful resort, and due to like an accidental booking, they have 2 separate rooms, and they decide to keep both of those rooms and pretend they don't know each other. It's very interesting, and the layers of what you do know versus what you don't know, the exploration of knowing someone so well but still letting them surprise you is important. And it was interesting to see a romance about the upkeep of a relationship rather than starting a relationship. Then I read Scattering His Virgin Bloom, Volume 2 by Aya Sakio. The less said about this, the better. I read Volume 1 and it was okay, and Volume 2 is better than Volume 1, but still like kind of sketchy, kind of a quick romance, kind of not a ton of building the relationship. So I gave this 3 stars. It probably could have been 2. I don't know. It was fine. Like, for what it is, it's fine. This is a manga about an Omega who is secretly an Omega, and then they present at like 20, and there's all this weird stuff with alphas, and it's just weird. It's just fine. It's just fun. Then I read The Thing About Jellyfish. I gave this 5 stars. This is by Ali Benjamin, and this is a middle grade book about a girl whose best friend dies in an accident, and they kind of had this falling out before she died, and they never got to make up. And it's about our main character, Susie, dealing with her grief and exploring like why this happened and trying to figure out why it happened. And it was really heartbreaking and sweet, and I think a really good middle grade for explaining grief and trying to get through grief. So I gave this 5 stars. If you hear a little boy, it's this guy sitting next to me. Also, don't pay attention to that stack of books either. There are books I am gonna unhaul soon. And Vino really wants to knock them over. I read The Death of Mrs. Westaway by Ruth Ware. I gave this 5 stars. It is like spooky, gothic, action, a really good mystery. I was kind of just along for the ride. I think the stakes are decently high. Although I feel like there's something that happens in the beginning that never actually comes back around, which feels like a missed opportunity maybe. I really liked this. The atmosphere was 10 out of 10. A spooky old house, a cantankerous woman who takes care of the house, like a con that, you know, goes sideways. Just super interesting, super fun. I listened to this on audio and I cannot wait to pick up more Ruth Ware. I did just buy her newest book, so that is probably the direction I'm headed. This is about our character Hal, who gets a letter that a grandmother or aunt has passed away, and she is one of the people who is inheriting money, and she needs to go to the family home, and hear out the will and meet all of her people. So they believe that she is the daughter of their sister who ran away, disappeared. So Hal believes that this is impossible. There's no way that this is her relation. The name isn't really right of what they call her mother. She doesn't think her mother is this person, but she is desperate for money. Her mother passed away a few years ago. She is grieving still, and she owes some sketchy creditors some money, and so she decides, why not try and get some money from these rich people? And it takes off from there. So she goes to this creepy old house that is huge and terrifying, and things spiral, and just the amount of characters and the way they were drawn. And I listened to the audiobook and it was so good. And then I started reading books for my personal readathon, New Book Knockout. So for my readathon, I read Bless the Daughter, Raised by a Voice in Her Head by Warsan Shire. This is a book of poetry. It was okay. I ended up giving it 4 stars because I don't think the poetry is bad. I think I just didn't connect to it. There were a couple standouts that I really liked, but these poems are a lot about being an immigrant or being alienated from your homeland or the land you grew up in or your parents grew up in, and kind of the separation there. But also it's about like womanhood and like familial relationships and familial trauma. It was interesting. And then I read The Swimmers by Julia Otsuka. This is a like general fiction novella. It's pretty thin. This is about a group of swimmers at this pool that you swim like every day, or at least every week, and then a crack appears at the bottom of the pool, and it's kind of a list. It's told in a very interesting manner because there are a lot of we sentences, so it's told in a plural we, or narrated through a plural we, but also it just does a lot of lists. I think it was doing more than I caught on to, because not only is it about all of these swimmers, but then it narrows into a story about Alice, and she is suffering from dementia, and it follows her journey after the crack is found in the pool, and then it goes from this big plural we to Alice specifically and her family. And I think, as I said, this is doing more than I caught on to, but I think this is probably a pretty smart book about alienation and being separated from your family and being like, I think it was, I don't want to say too smart for me, because I definitely could feel what it was doing, and it was still like beautifully written, and it was still a good story. I gave this 5 stars. And then I read Paris, the Memoir. This is about Paris Hilton and her childhood growing up with, you know, her rich family and in the spotlight and being a club kid in the 90s, but it's also about the Provo Canyon school and the abuse that she suffered and what happened there, and her activism that she is now doing to try and get these schools shut down and get the victims justice. I really enjoyed it. As someone who like grew up in the 90s and early 2000s, like I knew of Paris Hilton. My mom and I watched The Simple Life, especially the first season, and it was just interesting to see another side of Paris and see Paris as an adult. And you know, what she thinks of her journey so far. I thought it was really touching and I liked it, so I gave it 5 stars. Then I read Hope in the Dark, Untold History's Wild Possibilities by Rebecca Solnit, and this is a nonfiction book about activism, and I gave it 3 stars. So this is a series of essays about activism and the history of activism, environmental activism, the steps that people have taken in the past to get us where we are today, and the hope that we need to have that activism actually does something, even if we can't see the results right away. And those essays were like decent, but like you could tell that she knew what she was talking about and that she is an expert in this history of activism and environmental activism. But this was originally published in 2004, 2005, and there have been a couple essays added, one from 2009 and one from 2016, and a new foreword to try and update the essays or make the statement that like the things written about in here, the hope that we need to have is not lost. But it felt pretty dated because of that. I wasn't aware of a lot of the things she talked about in this, so it didn't feel very hopeful to me, especially now that like human rights have gone so downhill in the US. So yeah, I felt it was dated and it didn't give me hope, and it didn't give me strategies for hope or how to keep going or the things to motivate yourself. Like it would be one thing if it was if it had anecdotes from activists about how they keep hope, and I think there might have been a couple. There was one essay that got me and that was about it. So I gave this 3 stars. Then I read Zachary Ying and the Dragon Emperor by Ziran J. Zhao, and this was fantastic. This is a middle grade like fantasy. On her website she describes it as Yu-Gi-Oh meets Percy Jackson, and I think that is the perfect description. So this follows our main character Zach, and he gets possessed by the spirit of the first emperor of China, and then meets other friends who are also possessed by other emperors, and it's just a wild ride. It involves video games and historical lessons and this huge adventure traveling across the world. The stakes felt high. I liked the world building. I thought Zach was a great character to root for, and this is supposed to be the first in a series, but the second book hasn't even been announced. So I will be stalking the series page for this until the second book is on Goodreads. Thank you. Needless to say, I gave this 5 stars. Then the last book I finished in June was The Neighbor Favor by Christina Forrest. I listened to this on audio and it is wonderful. This is a romance and we follow Lily and Nick, and Lily out of the blue impulsively emails her favorite author because he just got a website, why not? And they start a correspondence that is really nice and like helps them both kind of process things. And they start a correspondence, they get really close, and then Nick, it's in the back, and then the author ghosts Lily. And then we find out that the author was Nick, and he moves in to the same apartment building as Lily unknowingly, and then they run into each other. He figures out that Lily is who she is, but she has no idea that Nick is the person that she was sending emails to and then ghosted her. The conflict was resolved really satisfyingly. I don't love miscommunication tropes, and the like mistaken identity trope can really get on my nerves sometimes because it's like, why don't you just tell them? Why? This, it kind of made sense why he didn't tell her, and it was always like weighing on his mind, and when she found out, it was satisfying, and it was just satisfying, the whole thing. It was a sweet romance. They had so much chemistry in my opinion, and I enjoyed the heck out of this. I gave this 5 stars. It might be the best romance of the year for me. Well, I did read Astrid Parker this year. Maybe this is the best straight romance I've read this year. And then we move into July. I did start this in June, but I finished it in July, and that is Things Jolie Needs to Do Before She Bites It by Kerry Winfrey. This is YA. It is about Jolie, who has an underbite, and at the end of the summer she's getting surgery to correct it. And initially she makes a list of things that she wants to do once her surgery is done, things that she can't do now, like eating an apple without cutting it up, kissing a boy, and wearing glow-in-the-dark vampire teeth. And then she gets obsessed with this idea that she could die in surgery, and she decides maybe some of those things on my list should be done before surgery. And this is her trying to kiss a guy and drive a convertible, and it was really cute. I like Kerry Winfrey's writing. This definitely felt more juvenile than her romances, which is fair, it's YA, but it also did feel more. I liked the characters, I liked Jolie. Some of the beauty standard stuff like didn't hit. I don't know. It was talking about beauty standards and how we try to, like, how we feel stuck in them. It was okay. I liked it. I was more in it for Jolie and trying to get her list done, though, than like the beauty standard messages it was trying to get across and the sister's pregnancy storyline. Like, there were a couple things I didn't care for in this, but overall, I gave it 4 stars. I did like the romance. I did like Jolie. Then, a book I haven't even hauled yet, but I went to the bookstore and I saw it and I thought, you know what? That sounds really good. I'm gonna buy it. And then I read it immediately, which does not happen, and it was amazing. And that is Lion's Legacy by Elsie Rosen. This is a queer YA Indiana Jones inspired story. Incredible. Absolutely wonderful. I loved it. The plot, the characters, all fantastic. So this follows Tennessee Russo, and he and his dad have this like adventure show where they go find like lost treasures. Paranormal things are happening, but they kind of hide that from the executives, but magic exists in this world, so they're trying to find magic artifacts. And then they have this falling out, but then 3 years later his dad is back and wants them to, get the band back together, be on the show again, and find these sacred rings. And there is like the Sacred Band of Thebes is a rumored like all queer, all male army that defeated Sparta, and it was about queer history and the importance of queer history and like reconciling with a queer identity. And there was a sweet romance, and just it was everything I wanted. It was pure escapism with a dash of like societal messaging and relevance. 10 out of 10, 5 stars. This is also the first in a series, and I cannot wait for the second book. Then I read Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I know, it's crazy I haven't read this yet. But now I have, and I don't get the hype. It was okay. I think the action scenes were good. So let me talk about it. This is a YA fantasy about Selena Sardathian. She is the greatest assassin in the kingdom of Adarlan? I don't know. There's a pronunciation guide in the back. Adarlan. In Adarlan? I hate the way that sounds. Adarlan. Anyway, she's the greatest assassin in Adarlan, and she got caught, and she's in this like salt mine prison, and the prince comes and says, hey, if you compete in this competition for me as like my champion, you could become the king's assassin and get out of here, and if you do 4 years of service for the king, you'll be free. And of course she jumps at that, and then goes to the palace, goes to the castle, the glass castle, and competes in this competition with a bunch of thugs and whatever to be the king's assassin, the king's agent. The setup is so good and the action was good, but our main character was just like, she was 18, and I need to kind of keep that in mind. There was a weird love triangle that didn't feel earned. The characterization was like mediocre for all the characters, and I don't get the hype. I am going to keep reading this series because I have the next 2 books. And then, I don't know, we'll see. We'll see if I like it, if I want to keep going. I gave this 3 stars, and I'm kind of on the fence about the other 2 books. And then I read Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I know, I hopped on the train with everyone else. I actually got the audiobook from my library and just recently bought the book because I saw it at Barnes & Noble. It was sold out everywhere. And this is a adult fantasy about a military college where it teaches people to ride dragons, and the stakes are really high from page 1. I will say the audiobook was fantastic, and I was in it like that. It was exactly what I needed in the moment. It was escapism, it was high stakes. There was no thought for anything else but this story when I was listening to it. So we follow our main character Violet as she enters this war college. She was trained to be a scribe, but then her mother is like, no, you're gonna go and be a dragon rider and like bring glory to the name. And so like from page 5, our character's life is in danger, and it does not stop from there. There is kind of a love triangle, and I really liked the love interest. I liked their dynamic. I liked our main character, and I cannot wait for the next book to come out because the end of this, I cried. Then, taking a break from all the fantasy, I finally read The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren, and I get why everyone was talking about this. It is the perfect summer vacation read. This follows Olive and Ethan. Their siblings are getting married. So Olive's twin sister and Ethan's brother. And at the wedding, everyone gets food poisoning except Olive and Ethan. So the bride had won a free all-inclusive vacation package to Hawaii. She can't take it now because she's barfing her brains out. So she says her sister should go. And Ethan goes with her because his brother says he should go. It is for 2 people. So they go on this vacation and pretend to be the married couple. And it was the rom-com escapism that I wanted. It's in a beautiful setting of Hawaii, and they explore the island, but also it's got like fun rom-com stuff, and their banter is cute. And the ending did, like, the third act conflict was not my favorite, but I think it was decent and it was earned. So I gave this 5 stars. And apparently just today on August 1st, an audiobook kind of mini sequel came out, and I cannot wait. I might buy it. I don't usually buy audiobooks. I get them from my library, but I don't know. I might have to buy the sequel to this. Okay, and then a conundrum. I read A Gathering of Shadows by V.E. Schwab. This is the second in the Darker Shade of Magic trilogy, and I read the first one last year. I thought it was okay, but I didn't love it. I thought I would like this one more, and I kind of didn't. So the first book follows Kel as he is a magician, or an Antari. He is a special kind of magician who can travel between worlds, and there are several different Londons. There's a red London, a white London, and a gray London, and then a mythical black London that their magic got out of control and like ate the world. And then of course on his journeys, Kel runs into someone named Delilah Bard, and she is a pickpocket. I remember I listened to the first one on audio, and I thought that had to do with why I didn't enjoy it as much, because sometimes that happens. And then I read this physically, and I thought, I don't think it was the audiobook's fault. It was okay. It was okay. I think V.E. Schwab's writing is good, but I think sometimes her character work has something to be desired. I don't know. I just really remember liking Vicious, and I have not been able to find another V.E. Schwab book that I enjoy as much as that one, which I think is very interesting. And I know I follow her on Instagram. I really like her, as a writer. I think she does interesting things. She hops genres, she hops age ranges, and so I admire that, because I feel like it's very easy to become caged in when you find success, because the publisher just wants you to publish the next romance. Like Christina Lauren, they want the next Christina Lauren romance. So I feel like for Christina, like it would probably be difficult for Christina Lauren to branch out and write like a deep fantasy. I don't know, because that's not your typical audience, right? There's no guarantee that your audience is going to follow you to different genres. So I do admire V.E. Schwab for that. But I just did not love this. Like this book, after the events of the first book, now in Red London, where Kel is from, they're having this like magical competition. And I think the thing that bugs me, the thing that didn't work, is that Delilah Bard, she goes by Lila. I just don't like her as a character, I feel. I don't like Kel that much either. So I think I just don't like these characters that much, and that's why the story is not super engrossing. And like I don't really understand their conflicts, and like they all do things that I'm just like, why are you doing this? Like Lila just does stuff and I'm like, but why? What do you gain? And we kind of understand why she does those things as the story goes on, but I don't know. So I didn't love this. I'm still giving it 4 stars. I know you're like, Megan, it sounds like you want to give it 2. I don't. It's decent. I just wanted to love it so much more than I did, I think. And I am going to read the 3rd book. Hopefully it's great. And then the last 2 are winners. I read Fence Rise Volume 5 by C.S. Pacat, Joanna the Mad, and Joanna Lafuente. I love this series. Okay, this is one of my picks for the Magical Readathon. We started a couple days early, so this I read end of July. This series follows a fencing team at an elite high school, and we mostly follow Nicholas, this guy right here. He is a very amateur fencer, and then Seiji, who is a very good fencer. And they battled in the first one, and then, you know, events happen. They end up on the same team. And in this volume, they go to a fencing like training camp with like 4 or 5 other elite schools. And it was very cool to see the world expand and meet these other schools, these other fencers, while the main conflicts for our group that we know and love are moving forward. So we've got Aiden, who doesn't seem to try. And we've got the captain, and he's not a huge part of this one. And then Nicholas is having a hard time at the camp, and Seiji is having a hard time because he's not challenged. I just think this is super cute. It's super funny. Like, look at these illustrations. They're so cute and fun, and like I love these characters. I'll read anything that C.S. Pacat writes. Just absolutely anything. And that includes this graphic novel series. Volume 6 doesn't come out until January, and I'm like, why? Make it sooner. So I gave this 5 stars. And the very last book I read in July will actually have its own dedicated reading vlog, and that is Camp Damascus by Chuck Tingle. Yes, the Chuck Tingle of Pounded in the Butt by My Own Butt, and many other classics. This is Chuck Tingle's horror traditionally published debut, and it was fantastic. I loved it. I'm not a huge horror girly, so take that with a grain of salt. This follows Rose, and she is part of a religion called the Kingdom of the Pines. They live in Montana. They're very isolated and very strict. And throughout the book, we learn about Camp Damascus, which is a gay conversion camp, and the effects it has on people around. This was so good. It talks about it. It discusses religious trauma and queer identity and friendship and love, and I enjoyed this so much. I think the horror elements were spooky scary. I thought the romance was decent. I thought the friendships were good. The discussion of how religion can affect you, and our main character Rose is also autistic, so it deals with that. It was just wonderful. I think it was smart. I think it was doing smart things. You can hear more in my reading vlog, which I will link below when it goes up. But I ended up giving this a 4.5, but I rounded it up to 5 on Goodreads. My critique is that it could have been longer. I think that it was doing good things, it was doing smart things, but the plot moved very quickly, and I think for such heavy topics, it really could have been delved into more and explored more through these characters, and maybe even like more horror. But for what it was, the quickness of it, it was good. And I think that it achieved what it set out to achieve, which is to prove that love is real. All my Chuck Tingle girlies know what I'm talking about. So those were the 20 books I read in June and July. Thank you for watching. And if you want to know what I read in August, you could like this video, you could subscribe to me, but really, you can do whatever you want. I'll see you next time.